Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to start our notes for assignment number 12, slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form looks like this because M is the slope and B is the y-intercept. This represents an equation for a line. The y-intercept is the dependent variable. The x-intercept is the independent variable. And B is the y-intercept. That's where the line will cross the y-axis. This form is most useful when you are given the slope and the y-intercept, or you can easily find the slope and the y-intercept. It is the most often used form. It's the form we use for graphing. So we are going to write the equation in slope-intercept form. This is the slope and this is the y-intercept. So the equation for a line that has a slope of 1/4 and it goes through this intercept point will be 1/4 x plus 9. And that will not just represent this point, but it will represent the points, all of the points on the line that have this slope and this y-intercept. Before we go on, I forgot to mention some things that you probably already know about slope, but let's just refresh your memory. If a line is going up as you go across the graph from left to right, this graph has a positive slope. If the line is going down as you go across the graph from left to right, it has a negative slope. If we have a totally flat horizontal line, the slope of this line is 0. If we have a vertical line going straight up and down vertically, the slope of this line is undefined. And the letter that we use to represent slope is the letter M. That is from some previously learned information. Okay, let's get back here to this problem number 2. If we're going to write the equation in slope-intercept form, we need to know the slope and we need to know the intercept. When you have a graph, you can find the slope by counting the rise over the run. I always start with the bottom point and I count how far does it go up and how far does it go over. Now we already know, since this line is going up, we already know that this is going to be a positive slope. And this positive slope is going to be 3/1. Now you should not leave that in that form, 3/1. 1 goes into 3 times, so the slope should be equal to 3. Now, this is where you have the y-axis, but on this graph, I don't see this line crossing the y-axis, so I'm going to have to add some more points to my line. And so if my slope is 3/1, it goes over 1 and down 3. And it goes over 1 and down 3. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This y-intercept would be 8, and it's in the negative direction, so the y-intercept is going to be -8. So the equation that goes with this graph would be y equals 3x minus 8. if you have an equation in y equals mx plus b form where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept, you start by plotting the y-intercept on the y-axis. Sometimes people plot it on the wrong axis. Make sure you're on the y-axis for the y-intercept. And use the slope to count rise over run. So in this equation, y equals 2x plus 5, the slope is 2, and the y-intercept is positive 5. So on the y-axis, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this point right here. Now, in order to count the slope, I need to have a rise over run, but I just have a number. But the number 2 is equal to 2 over 1, and so the 2 is going to be my rise, and this is going to be my run. And so I'm going to go up 2 and over 1. But that went off of my graph. You can also get a positive slope by going down 2 and left 1. Down 2 and left 1. Down 2 and left 1. And so this, those of you in Cami can use your line tool. And a good line has arrows on the end because the line keeps going on and on forever. It didn't ask it, but just let me remind you that the slope is going to be, the domain is going to be all real numbers, and the range is going to be all real numbers because it has arrows on both ends. Okay. So on this one, the slope is negative 1 over 5. And so when I get ready to count the slope, I always put the negative sign in the numerator so I don't forget it. And the y-intercept will be negative 1. On the y-axis, I'm going to put a point at negative 1. And since the slope is negative, I'm going to count down and right. Down and right would go off the graph. I get a negative slope by counting down and right. I can also get a negative slope by counting up and left. So I would go up 1 point, 1, 2, 3, 4, and left 5. It is going to get a more accurate line if you have several points on your graph to count. And so I connect the dots to make my line. I double check my line. This graph has a negative slope, and this graph has a negative slope, and this equation has a negative slope. I would like you to add one more example to your paper. What if I have an equation y equals 2x? What's my slope and what's my y-intercept? The slope is the number in front of the x. A slope of 2 is the same as a slope of 2 over 1. I need it in fraction form to make it easier to count my rise over my run. But what's the b? What is the y-intercept? And the y-intercept is not there because it is 0. Y equals 2x is the same thing as y equals 2x plus 0 because 2x plus 0 is just equal to 2x. If there is no y-intercept written, the y-intercept would be 0.